This time is for real. And we're gonna do it in English now, which is gonna be new for the both of us. It's going to be an experience. We're gonna see how it goes. So, Wakanda Forever is Marvel's newest film in this humongous universe they have been building for more than 10 years now, and I think everyone on earth knows what is it that it is. It's a bunch of superhero movies. In this one, they explore the death of King T'Challa and the consequences that it has for Wakanda and, in a way, for the rest of the world. It's a monumental 161-minute long movie, almost 3 hours, and I find that absurd. I'll give it that it's very emotional. I think that's one of the remarks that most people have about it, because it acknowledges the death of Chadwick Boseman, which was the actor that did the Black Panther in the previous movie. So after his passing, instead of just recasting someone else into that role, they completely modified the character and gave the persona of the Black Panther to someone else within the universe. From what I've seen, the movie has received overall good reviews. When it comes to IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, it has really good numbers, and people talk about it online for a bit, so it looked good, it looked promising. However, when I went into the movie, I tried not to have any or too many expectations on it. I didn't want to expect too much from it, because I know that Hollywood doesn't have a good record on delivering all these promises. And talking about emotional, if you want to make me feel emotional, go ahead and click subscribe, give it a like, leave a short comment on the video. That actually motivates me a lot to do this whole thing. So thank you if you do, and if you don't, I still hope to see you again around here at some point. It would be really nice. So let's start to pull the threads and see what we find, right? The movie starts off really good for me. It starts with this emotional way of the king's passing, right? King T'Challa's passing, and it's of great significance. And you can see that to his people. The whole event that takes place after he dies, you feel how much of a relevant event it would be for this civilization or community or country or whatever you want to call it. It's very interesting though, because they do this thing that I know it happens a lot in African cultures, in which death is not necessarily regarded as this sad moment, more regarded as a celebration of the person's life rather than commemoration of its death kind of situation. I don't know much about it, but I think that's the general idea behind of it. And I thought it was very interesting, because one of the first shots of the movie is this great parade of people having fun. Again, not because the king died, but celebrating how grand he was, how great he was for the country. I thought that was amazing. The first third of the movie, I think, it was really doing it for me in terms of tone, in terms of characters, in terms of emotions. It was really good. There were these instances in which you could see the United Nations, so there'll be France and the United States and whatever, trying to find ways to take advantage of the king's passing. And so they set up this political conflict at the very beginning of the movie that I thought was kind of interesting. It was going somewhere for me. I really liked it. The second important plot of the movie is the search of the world, or the United Nations, of vibranium, because within the Marvel lore it is established that vibranium is only found in Wakanda, but the United States and France and whatever, they're trying to find vibranium in other ways because it's such a powerful material. Like, so this sets up an interesting story in which this small, very independent nation feels weakened by the passing of the king and threatened by these other nations in their search for power. And up until that point, that'll be like, I don't know, like the first third of the movie, it was really doing it for me. It was interesting, it was complex, it was subtle, it was doing things for me. I was really excited in the beginning of the movie. And in this part of the movie, you can also see like how much effort they put in the costumes, especially the costume design of the queen, Ramonda, I think it's her name, Ramonda. I don't know how would you pronounce it in English, but she always had the most luxurious and amazing outfits on her that just exalted or highlighted how fierce of a character she was in front of the world. I thought her character was one of my favorites. Now, the thing is that from there onwards, it's like a downhill trip, and it's just like a really bad trip. And I do not understand how people are giving this movie such high ratings because it's just baffling. Really, it is. First, the obvious, the visual effects, the special effects in the movie, they're crap. They're really fucking bad. Like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of do know what's happening because there's like a crisis within the special effects business in Hollywood, right? There's a bunch of people that is like overworked in horrible conditions, getting very little recognition for their work. So there comes a tipping point in which these people that is so essential to making these stories believable, they simply cannot keep up with the demands of the studio, with their deadlines, with the constant change of direction, the constant change of ideas. They just cannot keep with it anymore, and they end up giving, you know, crappy results. And I think this is a very good example. There were multiple shots in which the people, like the actors themselves, looked off. They just looked weird, like plasticky or whatever, you know? I think some of the worst were the shots in which there was this huge aircraft, like a hovercraft kind of thing, and it projected this beam to like take things from the ground, you know, like an old school flying saucer that's taking the cow off the fields or whatever. But it just looks so bad, and it was a shot that happened so early in the movie that it just got me worried. It got me worried because it set a precedent of how shitty it was gonna be, and it just got worse than I thought it would, which was kind of incredible. Now, there's another thing that I can remember which like was just weird. There were several like funeral scenes in the movie, and the makeup on the main characters, I just didn't like it. I don't want to say that it's wrong or that it's necessarily bad or that, like, you know, because I know nothing of the cultures these people pulled inspiration from to design the makeup that they use, right? However, in these scenes, what like stayed in my mind were like these lines, these white lines they would draw on the characters' faces, and they just looked rushed. They looked like an afterthought, really. They looked like, oh shit, we have to make them look different somehow because it's a funeral. So yeah, whatever. Like white eyeliner on their faces to make it look different. I don't know. It was just so unpolished. It felt rushed, and I would have preferred if they did nothing. Like just stayed with the plain funeral clothes that would have looked fine for me. But again, I'm not an expert, so whatever, right? Now, another thing I realized is how long the movie is. Like you, when you're watching it, you feel how unnecessarily long it is. Like you can notice it. But the longer I think about it, the clearer it is to me that they seem to not know what they were doing, because they had almost 3 hours to develop these big cast of characters, to build these tensions, these conflicts, and you just don't see the conflict, you just don't see the characters, they feel plain. And given the fact that it's like a Marvel movie, of course, it relies a lot on previous installments for the setup of characters. But honestly, as someone who has lost her fanatism, her obsession for Marvel movies at this point, it was just very difficult for me to remember who this very minute secondary character from a movie from 3 years ago was supposed to be doing. You know, that was, maybe that's my problem, and I'm willing to accept it. Sometimes that's just the problem of the viewer. However, you did have almost 3 hours to set these people up. That's all I'm saying. Now, when talking about the main conflict of the movie, I get really angry. I get really angry because so fucking stupid, right? So, again, I was saying I was very excited because it seemed like this sort of political thriller of like Western nations trying to find vibranium on this one independent African nation, which is like a very colonizers versus colonized narrative, which it can give some interesting stories, it really can. But then, for some reason, they thought that wasn't enough, and they added a third group into this whole mess, which are like the Talocalis. I don't remember the exact name, but the people from Talocan. People from Talocan. And these people is kind of Wakanda, but under the water, because they have this secret country that nobody really knows about, and they have decided not to meddle with the affairs of the people, you know, from above. The thing is, it's just dumb. You see, a big thing for this movie, for the conflict of this movie, is that Wakanda feels very threatened by the people from Talocan, right? They do, because they also have vibranium, and they're not really humans. They can breathe underwater and whatever, and they're like, you know, they're powerful people. The thing is, the people from Talocan threaten Wakanda. They say, if you don't help us stay safe, we're gonna fucking destroy you. Problem is, you never see that threat from Talocan, because whenever there are like soldiers from there, it's just like 5 people. And when they finally attack Wakanda, like you see like 12 people at most, which is really funny because you're attacking Wakanda. You know, it's a big deal. You would expect to see more than 12 randos running around doing water bending. You know what I'm saying? And that takes me to another point, which is how irrelevant everyone from Talocan was, except for Namor, or Namor, or Kukulkan. He's supposed to be Kukulkan too, right? And I say this because if you ask me for the name of one single character from the Talocan faction that is not Namor, I don't know. I do not know. You cannot recall because they were so empty, so useless, really. And that's a problem because they needed to be important, they needed to be relevant, they're a threat to Wakanda and the world. And yet, you don't really know who the fuck they are. it's stupid. There's also this part of like movie logic that I just couldn't wrap my head around. As far as I understand, Wakanda is like a landlocked nation in Africa, right? And even if it's not a landlocked nation, which I'm pretty sure it is, but even if it was not, it's like on the eastern side of Africa, which is very far away from like the Yucatan Peninsula, which is where I believe Talocan is supposed to be. The thing is that this guy Namor, he keeps fast traveling from one place to another as if it's just like walking to the other block. Like, I understand we're, dealing with superpowered individuals here, but just the ease these people have to just randomly show up on the other side of the world is astonishing and very convenient for plot reasons. I mean, all I'm saying is these characters have to have spent a lot of time just crossing the freaking Atlantic and then somehow getting onto the other side of Africa. Like, that takes a lot of time, right? And Namor gives just like days of time to Wakanda to think of his term. So it's funny to me because either he spent that time traveling back and forth and doing nothing more, or just like randomly sleeping in the waters of the other side of the world because he had nothing better to do. It's just weird. Like, again, the more I think about it, the dumber it is. In terms of like the subplot, like the themes within the movie, I have many thoughts and questions, and I don't know what to do with them. Much like the first Black Panther movie, right? It tries to take on these subjects of colonization and like, I don't know if it would be like class struggle, but like definitely this culture shock between nations that try to exploit each other. In the first Black Panther, I thought it was very interesting because you had someone from Wakanda that grew up completely alienated from that culture and saw as a third party how much his own culture, and not just Wakanda but in general African culture, had been fetishized and sent to all other places around the world as if it was like an exposition thing, instead of like sacred artifacts for these people. I thought that was really interesting in the first movie. But in this movie, you have what is pretended to be two factions, right? The United Nations, so like big guys that rule the world or whatever. And you have the independent, indigenous civilizations that have somehow survived through the ages and have been able to maintain who they are and maintain their identities, which would be Wakanda and Talocan. So I think the movie tries to reiterate this narrative of colonizers and colonized by setting up the United Nations to start digging the sea for vibranium, either by taking advantage of the death of King T'Challa from Wakanda, or finding vibranium that belongs to Talocan, or at least that Talocan feels they own. It's a very clear reference to this extractivist mechanism in which colonies used to work, and even today in which economy still works, right? The thing is that neither Wakanda nor Talocan were ever colonized. That's the point. That's how they maintain their identity. And so whenever in the movie they make these jokes of, haha, I've never seen a colonizer in chains, it's like, yeah, that's true, and I guess that's funny, but at the same time, do Wakandans even have the right to say those things? Because, like, my sister in Christ, Africa was completely colonized, and you just decided to shut off to the world and be like, yeah, this ain't happening? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not laughing with the colonized, because you don't belong to the colonized at that point. I'm sorry, it's just I find the idea of remaining neutral while every single civilization around you falls, gets erased, and falls for genocide. It's just weird to me, like it's just weird. And then on the other hand, you have the people from Talocan. I find this one very interesting because it's these people that also decided not to meddle with like the problems of the people from above, which is very understandable. And when the people from above start to dig so deep that they may find them, they get worried. Again, very understandable. Why would they not get worried? They know how these nations from above work. They know what they can do. Understand. Problem is that, and Marvel always does this for its villains, or maybe not always, but almost always, they take someone that is somehow a victim and they twist their motivations in such a way that they become a villain. In this case, again, Namor is worried about his civilization, basically being colonized. He wants to protect it. Nice. What is his first thought? Let's kill this random scientist girl because she knows how to find us. Okay, it's a stretch. It's a stretch. Characters gave solutions to that problem in that movie, and nobody liked that, but there were alternative solutions to just killing someone. But the problem is, after that, like, the next step in the escalation is you, Wakanda, have to help me commit genocide against everyone from above, because if we don't do it first, they're gonna do it to us, which is messed up. Like, how do you go from I'm worried my civilization is going to be wiped out to shit, I have to wipe them out first? That's fucking messed up, right? And I understand the logic of you have to give your villains like some sort of counterweight, for their villainous, so like they feel like they remain human, like you have to give certain human qualities to your characters. And I think Marvel does that very good by means of giving them stories that are just messed up. Like, if you were in their shoes, you'd be angry too. If you were in their shoes, you'd be worried too. But then they just totally twist it for reasons that I just don't comprehend, honestly. Now, of course, there are layers and layers on how these struggles between, countries, cultures, classes get interpreted by writers, by directors, right, and by actors. But I do feel like themes were just taken at surface value, like I just felt it was like a very dumb take on this subject. And to be fair, I know it's a Marvel movie. I'm not expecting the greatest, most decolonized superhero interpretation of the struggle of nations. Like, I know what I'm getting into, but still, that doesn't mean I cannot, pick apart the fucking movie and realize that it's a piece of shit. Also, there's one thing that I just cannot wrap my head around. Maybe it's movie logic, and it's the fact that the new Black Panther, she's a scientist sort of character, right? Her forte is doing science and finding solutions through technology and chemistry and whatever. But when she gets the Black Panther persona, she's a total badass now, and she's an expert in melee combat, and she kicks and punches and whatever, which is cool. But then it just makes me wonder, is the suit what gives the Black Panther its ass-kicking powers, or did the person who became the Black Panther have to train and learn how to kick ass, because I really thought the Black Panther thing was like a military rank kind of thing, you know, like by owning it or by having that rank, you make your authority clear in Wakanda, right? But it's not like he gave you like all the ass kicking powers. Like you somehow had to do something to be strong, but maybe not. I don't know. And because the thing is, like, maybe the suit gives you strength and super speed or whatever, you know, but like, does it also give you the knowledge on how to use the speed and the strength? It's just, I'm overthinking this, which just doesn't make sense because I cannot, I just cannot believe this new Black Panther is like a martial arts expert all of a sudden. It's just weird. It came out of nowhere for me. It would have made a lot more sense if one of the uh, guards of the king got the title. I know it wouldn't make sense either because the Black Panther has to be the king, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, how does she know how to kick ass? Make it make sense. Marvel, your movies are really expensive. Make it make sense. So, in conclusion, the movie was disappointing. Even though I was not expecting much from it. Thankfully, though, I went to the movies with a friend, so I had someone to trash talk the movie with. That was fun. That was probably the best part of it. But yeah, the movie it's just it's not as good as they make it seem to be. It really isn't. Like, if you really want to watch the movie, I would suggest you watch it at home with friends. You get a pizza, you cook some nice food, get a couple beers, and just have a fun time at home. Because it's not worth spending all that much money going to the movies. Honestly, it just isn't. With all that being said, I I I I don't know what I was expecting. I was definitely not expecting anything particularly good, but this was lower than I thought. It just worries me how low the bar is for superhero movies. Like, she's crazy because the bar was low enough already, but these last couple years since the whole Infinity Wars event, it's just it's not been the same. And there have been very interesting video essays on YouTube explaining why that's the case. Have not settled for one particular reason, but it's definitely not the same. And I know how ironic it is for someone who's wearing this shirt to say those things, but yeah, maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know, man. I don't know. However, I think I'm gonna wrap it here, guys. I thank you so much for your time here. Let me know what you thought of this movie. I feel like I need to keep discussing this movie so I can actually process it. So let me know down below what you thought, and drop a like, subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. I thank you so much for staying until the end of the video, and see you around. Bye.